constant crisis management, constant damage control, constant problem solving, never having enough team, never having adequate resources, never having adequate systems in place because we just were prioritizing building the business and riding that wave and keeping on running forwards. But what it looked like on the outside compared to what it looked like on the inside were two completely different stories. And I have to say, it takes a strong stomach to work in and to lead a business like that that's growing that rapidly, because there's very little solid ground to hold on to. We were biting off more than we could chew and chewing and chewing and chewing and chewing and chewing like crazy every single day. I'm Madeline Eliza, leader, writer, performer, and founder of Bhakti Lab, an incubator for soul-led entrepreneurs. Join me to explore the edgy intersection of the brain and the body, feminine and masculine, ancient and modern, sensual and spiritual, to help you liberate your personal power and turn your biggest, boldest visions into reality. Hi everybody, and welcome back to the show. My name is Madeline Eliza, and I'm very excited to be back here with you today, doing a little story time from a formative experience for me where I learnt the meaning of the term blitzscaling while I was leading operations in Australia's fastest growing company, an online travel agency called TripADeal, which I was instrumental in growing from a tiny little startup turning over $500,000 a year to what became the fastest growing company in Australia 2 years running. We ended up, by the time I left the business, turning over almost $100 million in revenue annually. And this all took place over the space of 3 or 4 years. It was an incredibly rapid, exciting, slightly insane hyper-growth business success story. And the business recently sold for over $200 million. So it was really an incredible journey to be a part of. And I was helming the operations during that period of exponential growth. And I learned such a lot. And I'm here today to share some of those learnings with you. I want to start by introducing the term blitzscaling, which was coined by Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn. And blitzscaling can be defined as prioritizing speed over efficiency in the face of uncertainty. And if you've been involved in a leadership role in a rapidly growing business, you'll know that you have choices to make. You have choices to slow down and tidy things up, consolidate your growth, clean up the mess, hire right for the long term, or you have a choice to seize the moment and ride the juggernaut and prioritize speed. And this is what blitzscaling enables and allows for. And it's kind of a high risk approach to business growth, but when you're in a business like I was with TripADeal, where you've hit this sweet spot of product market fit and there's real estate to be claimed within the marketplace, and you know that if you don't claim it, someone else is snapping at your heels, coming along ready to take your place. Sometimes you just have to run, and you have to run with speed, and you're running into the face of uncertainty all day, every day. And it means that you're not doing things in the most efficient way. And I've often described the experience at TripADeal. If I showed you a graph of the revenue growth year on year for those 3 or 4 years of hyper growth, it's your classic hockey stick growth curve. It looks incredibly impressive. And I'll pop that up on my socials if you want to have a look at that, at the actual numbers of what the business managed to achieve during that time. We went from $500,000 to $2 million to $20 million to $80 million in revenue in the 3 years I was running the operations. It was an extraordinary journey. You look at that from the outside and it looks like a fabulous success story. But if I showed you a picture of what the business looked like on the inside, it was kind of like a plane stuck together with duct tape, with its wings just holding together, or a ship full of holes leaking. These are the kind of images that come to mind. Constant crisis management, constant damage control, constant problem solving, never having enough team, never having adequate resources, never having adequate systems in place because we just were prioritizing building the business and riding that wave and keeping on running forwards. But what it looked like on the outside compared to what it looked like on the inside were two completely different stories. And I have to say, it takes a strong stomach to work in and to lead a business like that, that's growing that rapidly, because there's very little solid ground to hold on to. You're just running with a great deal of uncertainty all the time. So I offer those little visuals as a starting point. And I wanted to share 10 things that I learned as part of that journey, because there were some really key insights, which I think if you haven't experienced something like that, where it actually felt like we were back to back flanking each other in the trenches, going to war every day to try and overcome everything that needed to be overcome to keep pushing the business forward and to deal with these extraordinary challenges of scale. When you've been through something like that, you gain these insights that I otherwise wouldn't have. And I wanted to share them with you today. Maybe you're building a business that you're hoping to move into hyperscale. Maybe you're just interested. I think even if you're not looking to grow a $100 million business, because it does take an awful lot from you personally, and that's one of the things I want to speak to here. Even if you're building a lifestyle business, or you're consulting, or you're doing something at a smaller scale and you're not interested in that level of hyper growth, I think a lot of these learnings really apply to all stages and all levels of entrepreneurship, and hopefully will inspire you to act a little more boldly, to explore your edges, because that is the beauty of working in this way. So, number one, the first thing, and I'm going to be unpacking pieces of the TripADeal story along the way. So TripADeal is an Australian travel company. It's recently been bought out by Qantas, which is our national airline. And it started out with the founders, Norm Black and Richard Johnston, working in Byron Bay, which is where I live. And when I started the company in 2013, we were selling 2-hour kayaking trips locally. We were selling winery tours, kind of low-cost tourism-related activities, and also some Bali hotel accommodation. That was a big part of the offering because the founders had a strong connection to Bali. And we kept having customers asking for more. And for example, we had some Thailand packages as well, where there was accommodation included, but not necessarily day tours. And the customers that were coming for these international packages were increasingly baby boomers, so people who were retired in their 60s and 70s, wanting to travel and wanting to do it cheaply. And the key here was that we really needed to listen to the customer. And we gradually started offering more international packages. I think the first big deal we had was a very cheap, affordable 10-day China tour with flights, which our supplier provided everything, including the flights. And we took it felt like such a huge risk at the time to take out a half-page or even maybe a strip newspaper advertisement. It was like $5,000 to $10,000 of marketing spend, which at that time felt enormous. It was this big gamble. Fast forward a few years and that was like a tiny drop in the ocean of the weekly marketing spend. But at that time it felt like a big step. And we ran this ad and it performed really well. And the demographic at that time was mostly baby boomers. So people in their 60s, 70s, mostly retirees. And they wanted more. And they wanted more of this really affordable international travel to tick things off the bucket list, but in a way that made it accessible for everybody, not just those who were very affluent and could afford to create these bespoke custom travel packages via their travel agent. And there was a lot of interest in these packages, but what we were really hearing from these customers is, I'm scared to book with you. I've never booked travel online before. How do I know if I can trust you? How do I know if this price is too good to be true? And so one of the hallmarks of that company, and I believe one of the keys to its success, was that we had a customer service team in Australia, onshore, from the get-go. And we were available, I think, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. from the start, so extended hours, and we would forward the office phone to the founder's mobile, sometimes my mobile, for the evening shift so that we could speak to customers in the evening. This is how scrappy it was in the beginning. And there's one hilarious story where we had this customer call back, and the next day to talk about something. She'd been trying to contact us the day before, and she said, "Oh, you're in a much better mood than you were last night." And it turned out the previous night that the customer service representative, when she was setting up the phone forward to the founder's mobile, actually just sent it to a completely random mobile number, a lady that we didn't know, who was getting calls from people saying, "I want to ask about this China trip all night long." And this woman, apparently, by the time she spoke to this customer, was irate, saying, "I'm not TripADeal, stop calling me." So all sorts of crazy, scrappy stories happened along the way. Anyway, the point is that we listened to the customer from the get-go, and we prioritized at great cost to the business. It would have been much more affordable to send all the customer support offshore to an external international kind of calling hub, but we kept it in-house at the headquarters in Byron Bay for the duration of the business. I believe, well, I don't know what's happened since it's been sold to Qantas, but for all the time that I've known the business, that's been how the customer service has been managed in-house, onshore. And it did an amazing job of establishing trust with the customer and establishing this relationship and helping the customer to become comfortable with booking travel in a new way, because we completely disrupted the industry. So listening to the customer in terms of their fears and their needs, and also listening in terms of their desires and the types of holidays they were interested in booking, which leads into my next point, which I've written here, suck it and see, because a lot of what we did was just trial and error in those early days. And I have a lot to say about the importance of making data-led decisions and doing your research and being astute and strategic. But sometimes, especially when you're moving at speed, you just need to try things and see what sticks. There is a level of that to business success, I believe. There certainly was in this case. So trying this new package, trying this new marketing channel, making educated guesses, but just being prepared to try things and being prepared for things to fail. And if they failed, to learn quickly and fail forward and keep moving on to the next attempt, to keep iterating. As we were doing that with product offering, we learned very quickly what resonated and what didn't with our customer demographic, which did shift over time as well. And as we developed more and more product that really appealed to that customer base, of course, the customer base then grew. So that was my second point, was to just not be afraid to try things, not be afraid of failure, be prepared to fail fast, fail forward, keep learning, keep iterating, and have faith that, whatever you're taking action, you're moving in the right direction rather than sitting still and getting into this analysis paralysis situation, which cripples so many businesses and so many entrepreneurs. Just keep moving, using your smarts, using your strategy, but also being prepared to take chances and to fail along the way. That was really integral to the success of this business. And I believe that if we hadn't been up for trying new things, then someone else would have come along and captured all of that market share, because it became a very, very competitive space. When we started advertising, we were advertising in the travel pullouts of the Sunday newspapers here in Australia. When we started, the travel section was about 10 pages. And at the height of the business growth, when all of our competitors were piling on trying to take our market share, that travel section sometimes would be 40 pages long, full of advertisements just like ours, of competitors trying to put packages together just like ours. And it was a very, very interesting time to be part of the Australian travel industry. My third point was the importance of risk. The reason that business succeeded and outpaced everyone else is because we were prepared to do things that nobody else in the industry was brave enough to do at that time. Because we were listening to the customer and trying new things, as we evolved the product offering, we started selling, for example, European package tours for your Australian customer, many of whom had never even been overseas before and were retirees wanting to tick things off their bucket list. That was kind of the picture of the market that we were working with. And we kept getting requests from customers, can you please ticket my flights for me as well? Because they were used to booking their travel with a travel agent who would do everything, but for like 3 times the cost of what we were doing. We were doing group package tours. Nothing was bespoke. And this is full credit to the founders and the CEOs of this business, who had this extraordinary appetite for calculated risk and courage and kind of a playful approach to it. Like, yeah, let's give it a go. Let's see. I've really learned so much and have so much admiration for those guys. And it was such a privilege to work alongside them. And so we went and got a flight ticketing license, and we installed the software, and we hired a few people who knew how to ticket flights and had worked at different travel agents. And we started offering flights as part of these package tours. And this was the key to the success of that business, because we were willing to take those risks and package the product in that way with the risk built in. We could offer products. We could offer a $5,000 European tour, including flights, price fixed, guaranteed for the customer, which nobody else was doing at that time. And it drove this extraordinary business growth over a very short period of time. So taking calculated risks was very much a part of that. And looking at how to get the edge on the competition and listening to what the customer needs and then finding ways to deliver that. And sometimes that means doing things that nobody else is brave enough to do. Number 4 I've got here, Everything is Figure-outable. I think that's a book title by, I want to say Marie Forleo. I might be getting that wrong. Anyway, there's a book with that title that I saw and I was like, that feels like my guiding philosophy. So I was working the operations of this business where we had these amazing salespeople putting these deals together. We had this amazing customer support team selling to the customers, and then we had to actually fulfill all of these promises that we'd made to our customers. And it was constant problem solving, constantly putting out fires, constantly facing new problems that we hadn't faced before, problems of scale. I can remember the business at that time, we had several office spaces around this central car park in the Byron Bay Industrial Estate. And when I'd started there, we had one small office with 3 of us in the office. And then as the business grew and more office spaces in the same complex became available, we just kept taking over more and more office spaces. And in the end, there were like 8 or 9 different spaces with this car park in the middle. So I spent 3 years literally pacing that car park, putting out fires and talking my team members off of ledges, basically. It was a wild time. And I can remember one such conversation with our head of logistics, who remains a very close friend and colleague to this day, at like 7:30 at night. It's getting dark. We're standing in that car park, and we were coming up to the peak travel season, which was April, May was our peak time, when some months we had tens of thousands of customers traveling all over the world. And it was her job to piece it all together and to deliver the documentation to the customers. And I can remember her saying to me, I just feel like there is this tsunami that is about to engulf me. And that's the reality of running operations in a business that's successful and where the fulfillment is complicated. You can make all these sales up front, but then you've somehow got to actually deliver and fulfill all of these orders. And it did feel like there was a tsunami coming at us. And we were biting off more than we could chew, and chewing and chewing and chewing and chewing and chewing like crazy every single day. And what I learned through that, constantly being faced with new challenges that I hadn't faced before, having to problem solve different complex situations that I hadn't navigated before. But it's given me this incredible sense of confidence and resilience and self-reliance, because time and again, and projects kept getting thrown at me, go like, here, can you please do this? And I would think, I've never done that before. I'm not really sure. Like, that's massive. But time and again, I kept delivering, and through the process learned, I can actually figure out pretty much anything that gets thrown at me. And it's incredibly empowering when you work in that way, but you only get there by standing in the fire and feeling it blaze through you and feeling yourself come out the other side of that fire again and again. And that sense that everything is figure-outable has given me such a sense of strong grounding and courage and confidence in all aspects of my life going forward after that experience, because I don't know that I'll ever experience business growth quite like that ever again in my lifetime. And even personally, as like a personal development crash course, that's about as intense as it gets. And this is from someone who's navigated a divorce with 2 young children. Like, there's a similar level of intensity there. So when we go through the challenges of rapid business growth, one of the amazing results is this courage and confidence and like self-belief that comes out the other side of that. And it gives you the confidence to go on and bite off other new challenges that you haven't tried before, because your past experience shows you that I've done this before. I've been in situations where I felt scared and unsure, and I've always been able to figure it out. So I'm going to keep going forward with courage and pushing my edges all the time. Number 5, I've got surfing the waves. And this relates to creativity and play, because when you're in an intensely stressful situation, you can choose to collapse under the stress and tell yourself how terrible it is and allow that cortisol to flood your body. Or you can keep finding ways to raise your vibration, to move into a space of play. And I've spoken about this on a previous podcast episode, how we can harness the state of play to better do this job of living near our edges. Staying in that space of creativity and play, treating it like a game, even though it was vitally critical that I pull off whatever it was I was attempting to pull off on any given day. It was of essential, vital importance to the business that I didn't fuck up, basically. But if I could keep myself in a space of play and treating it like a game and remembering that it's not actually life and death. Treating it like a sport almost. I found that shift really essential in maintaining my mental health and stability throughout the stresses of that time. And I think, again, for anyone navigating intense stress, the more we can see it as play and use our creativity as well. I'm a very creative person. That's been my background. And when you're in an intensely operational problem-solving role, that's really helpful. And that hadn't occurred to me before going into that role, but I found that, having this like wellspring of creativity and playfulness in me really helps me in navigating this. And it's very helpful as a leader as well, because if you're spinning out and crumbling, everyone around you can feel it. So the more you can stay robust and playful, the more buoyant your team will be, and the more likely they will be to stay within the business and help you achieve these seemingly insurmountable goals that you're trying to achieve. Number 6 feeds on from that point around self-leadership and impact. So I really learnt during my time there, if I let the stress get on top of me, if I didn't take care of myself, if I wasn't looking after my sleep and my nutrition and my exercise and my own relationships and my own personal practices, and by the way, I'm much better at managing my energy in that way now than I was then. But even then, with the days that I let it get on top of me, my whole team would crumble and everybody could feel it. And it's like I was leading a team of about 50 people. And then I had close working relationships with my peers in other departments as well. And if I crumbled, everybody started to think, oh my God, like what if we can't pull this off? I really felt that. And I had many conversations with the CEO to that effect. Like you need to not lose your shit, basically. Because if I was crumbling, then everyone around would suddenly, it's like the wool would come off their eyes and they'd realize the enormity of what we were trying to pull off, which when you keep people in a space of energy and play, they can bounce along. But if you as the leader are not well regulated and not within a zone where your nervous system is kind of coping, then there's a huge ripple effect. So managing your own energy, your own regulation, your own mental state is vitally important as a leader. You can do all the MBAs in the world that you want to, but if you're not managing yourself in a way that you're having a positive impact with warmth and joy and support with the people around you, when they're all under extraordinary pressure, you're going to lose team members very quickly. And even if they're within the organization, you're going to lose engagement. So self-leadership is absolutely essential. So in addition to self-leadership, I learned a lot of lessons about building radical trust in leadership teams as well. I mentioned earlier in the episode that it felt as if we were in the trenches, back to back, flank to flank, relying on each other for our lives. That's how it felt within that senior leadership team. And I learned a lot about radical trust and the importance of authenticity, the importance of dropping your armor as a person. Because, by the way, when you go through blitzscaling growth like that, it pushes you through this incredible personal development program where you have to keep up leveling your self-concept and the way that you operate, because you're no longer leading a team of 10, you're leading a team of 100. You're no longer dealing with a $1 million revenue business, you're dealing with a $100 million revenue business. And who and how you be needs to change as a result of that. And when you're going through that as a leadership team, there's a beautiful opportunity to support each other, and there's a beautiful opportunity to stay very tightly connected as human beings. And the business matters need to be addressed, sure, but there's also, and I've done this, I've worked in partnership with founders my whole career. Since this time, I kind of found my feet working in operational leadership roles, and I've then carried on in 3 or 4 other businesses where I've had a very close working partnership with the founder or the CEO. And this level of radical trust and back-to-back like comradeship has been foundational to my work. Because when there's erosions in that trust, when there's things that are being unspoken, when there's broken agreements that haven't been cleaned up, when there's resentments allowed to fester, when we're not in our full authenticity, we're not fully sharing our fears or our worries with each other, the fabric of that relationship can erode. And one of the things I really learned at TripADeal, and again, key to the success of that company, was the way that we as a leadership team at the C-level really had each other's back and supported each other. And I've carried that through to every role that I've had since. I've actually recorded a training series called De-Armored Leadership, which folds those insights into it. I think we're human beings first, and we're leaders and business people second. And we do each other a disservice when we try to override the fact of our humanity. We're fallible. We have weaknesses. We have vulnerabilities. We have fears. We have dysfunctional patterns of relating sometimes that come out in the workplace as well. And when we try to just ignore all of that and wear this corporate suit of armor, I think we rip ourselves off and we rob ourselves of some of the richest parts of building a business in partnership with other people. So radical trust within leadership teams has been an essential learning for me, and it's foundational to everything that I do and everything that I have done since then. And then I want to speak to teams. I've spoken about self-leadership. I've spoken about leadership with peers of leadership team, like C-level leadership teams. I want to also speak to managing and leading teams. So if you're a leader and you've got a number of people who are reporting to you on different hierarchies, perhaps, however that team is structured, I discovered the term psychological safety when I was working at TripADeal. And it was an interesting frontier. It was a bit like a gold rush, where this thing was just growing like crazy. We had new staff coming in all the time. That's part of blitzscaling. So prioritizing speed over efficiency in the face of uncertainty means that you do things like you work with systems that are far from ideal. So at TripADeal, we built this $100 million business on Google Sheets because we didn't have a CRM that could do what we needed it to do. And if we'd slowed down for long enough to build the CRM that we needed, one of our competitors would have swooped in and stolen our market share from right under our noses. So we kept pushing until the business reached like a growth plateau. It's like we climbed this mountain, we reached a safer plateau, and then we could turn around and consolidate the CRM system and actually build software that did what we needed it to do. But until then, we had this incredibly cumbersome set of Google spreadsheets. Some of them were 100 columns wide. We had one sheet for each deal that we sold, each travel deal. And every customer that was traveling on that deal had an entry on that sheet. Because if you think about it, in the travel industry, We had to capture all of that customer's passport information with 100% accuracy, because if there was a spelling error in their name, they could be denied entry onto that flight. Things like dietary requirements, medical issues. We started offering stopovers, which we offered we started doing it in a bespoke way. Someone would say, oh, when you book my flights, could you book me 2 nights in Hong Kong on the way? And we very quickly realized that was a very inefficient way of doing it. So we started packaging stopovers for a fixed price as well. So, you could buy a Hong Kong stopover for an extra $400, or you could buy a Dubai stopover for an extra $500, or whatever it might be. So all of this information was contained in these deal sheets, and our very patient, long-suffering reservations team managed the inputting of that information. There's lots of more detail that I could go into, but I'll keep it brief for the purposes of this episode today. And we then used that information to generate all the customers' bookings and travel documentation. And it was incredibly cumbersome. It was incredibly frustrating. There was a very high margin for error because it was all manual and it wasn't like a centrally integrated CRM system. But if we'd slowed down to build the CRM system that we needed, we would have lost the opportunity. So that's a fundamental part of blitzscaling. And another aspect of that, another way that blitzscaling can play out when you're all hands on deck and you need to grow a team rapidly, often it means hiring Mr. or Mrs. Right now instead of Mr. or Mrs. Right. So you just need bums on seats, and sometimes the hiring process isn't as rigorous as it could be or should be, because you actually just need to hire that person and keep moving through the mountain of work that's waiting for you. It's sort of hedging your priorities. And so the result of that is that our team rapidly expanded, and the org chart was constantly shifting. We had new departments being created. We had people being promoted. We had new teams forming. We had new staff coming in and training all the time. And it created this gold rush atmosphere where people were scrambling for influence. They were scrambling for authority. They were scrambling for position. It's natural. It's like there was power there on the table, and a lot of people were trying to grab their piece of it. And I learned a lot about psychological safety. Psychological safety is a term popularized by Harvard Business School professor Amy Edmondson. And this is the felt permission for candor, where teams feel safe to ask questions, to voice concerns, to say, I don't understand, to express fears that they might have, to question the decisions that their managers are making. They feel free and safe to do all of that without fearing repercussions. And there were times in my experience at TripADeal where people did not feel safe because the landscape was shifting so rapidly and teams were constantly changing. People's jobs responsibilities were constantly changing because suddenly there was this new project that needed to be delivered. It was very dynamic and very fast moving. And some people loved that and thrived in that environment, and other people didn't. Other people prioritized stability, and having that sense of stability and predictability is more important to them as a personal value. And neither is right or wrong. It's just that we're all wired differently. And I noticed that with that uncertainty and the instability that came as a natural byproduct of blitzscaling, quite a lot of team members would spend quite a lot of time being caught up in this kind of base chakra safety and security fear and uncertainty around their position, feeling unsafe, being uncertain, and it actually really distracted from the work that needed to be done. So I became really interested in this concept of psychological safety, and it's something that I tried very hard to instill in my teams to, even if there were huge movements happening in the broader organization, I tried to buffer my teams from that to some extent by offering them like a safe harbor where they were psychologically safe, where their fears and concerns could be voiced and expressed. And one of the main strategies that I used and continue to use to this day, because when people are feeling unsafe like that, there's this fear that, maybe conversations are happening that I'm not aware of, or maybe I didn't do that right. Like, this is all new. I don't know if I delivered in the way that I was expected to, if I'm meeting expectations, because the expectations were often unclear because we were running at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And something that I continue to say to every team I work with today is, if there is a problem with your performance, if there's a change that needs to take place, if there's something that needs to be addressed between us, something that needs to be cleared up, I will have that conversation with you. So you don't need to wonder if everything's okay or if your position is safe, because I will be having conversations with you. So if I'm not having a conversation with you about that, then you can just rest assured knowing that everything's good. And there's a real skill in being able to have hard conversations, in being able to wade into the mess of human emotion that is always present in these hard conversations in the workplace. As much as we cling to the facade of professionalism, we're vulnerable, emotional human beings. All of us, every single one of us, even the most hardened corporate alpha male silverback has a soft and tender heart inside. And so I think keeping that in mind and cultivating the courage and the communication skill set to be able to have hard conversations with people and to have them promptly when they need to happen, that's a really fundamental aspect of good leadership, in my opinion. Brene Brown calls it rumbling, and I love that term because it feels like that. It's like, oh, I need to have this conversation and I've planned as much as I can, but they're an emotional human being. I can't plan everything because I have to allow for their response and reaction to the information that I'm about to share. And we're just rumbling in it together, and it's awkward and it's uncomfortable, and we often feel like we haven't done it perfectly. But being in our authenticity, leading from the heart, and treating each other with respect and dignity as human beings, and that means having hard conversations when they need to happen, is a fundamental piece of good leadership, and it's fundamental to creating psychological safety in teams. So that is a lesson that I learned very powerfully during my time in this rapid growth environment as well. Point number 9, I've written, nobody really knows what they are doing. And I mean, this is true to an extent. Of course, we had an incredible team, by the way, with some incredibly talented people from all facets of business experience, people from the travel industry, people who were new to the travel industry, and I've continued to work with incredible people since, both within organizations that I've worked with and also in different corporate partnerships. But when you're breaking new ground, especially when you're doing something that's never been done before, not by you or anyone else, which is what we were doing at TripADeal, you are making it up as you go along. And you're doing your research and you're using data and you're making educated decisions, but there's a level of making it up as you go along. And I think this is true of anybody doing new, bold, groundbreaking things. And it's kind of empowering to remember that. Everybody's making it up as they go to an extent. I spent a lot of time feeling imposter syndrome because I was a 30-year-old woman in a C-suite with men who were 45 and 50 years old. And, you know, I felt that, I'm not sure if I belong here, even though the results that I was creating spoke for themselves. And I would keep going into meetings with my peers and with other like major significant corporate partners and realized that, nobody's got all the answers, actually. Nobody completely 100% knows what they're doing all the time. We're all just human beings rumbling through this. And again, it's stepping into that place of treating it as play, which is very empowering, and which, even though you're in a high stakes environment, it really takes the pressure off, which I think is where we all perform at our best. Because if you're seized up in fear and a fight or flight reaction, you can't do your best work. If we can just try and relax the nervous system and also connect with each other as human beings, which this insight that nobody really knows what they're doing all the time, really helps us to do that, just to connect with each other on a human level and take an approach of working it out together. We can be much more effective than if we're clutching onto this armor and pretending that we've got all the answers all the time. We've all worked with people who pretend that they have all the answers all the time, and it's quite frustrating. I'm sure you can relate. So yeah, this is an invitation to just acknowledge that sometimes we don't have all the answers. And actually, as a leader, it's very empowering for your team if you can be authentic and open with them, and you build much greater rapport, you build much greater loyalty, you actually build more respect, because people are very perceptive generally, And if there's someone up the front pretending they know everything when it's just a flimsy facade, most people can see through that. So that's all I have to say on that point. My last point, when it comes to growing a business like this at rapid scale, is that I've written all it takes is everything. And maybe if you're building a lifestyle business, with smaller aspirations, then this is not true. But blitzscaling from $0 to $100 million in 5 years, it takes everything. It takes an extraordinary toll on your personal life if you're a senior leader in that business. Massive. It takes an extraordinary amount of your energy, your brain power, your time. It asks you to dig deep into yourself again and again and again until you think there's nothing left and you just want to quit. Like, that will happen more times than you can imagine. And I want to just put this out there because there's a lot of, there's a lot of talk out there in the social media sphere about building lifestyle businesses, and you just set up a 4-hour work week and da-da-da. And it's like, that's possible. But when we're talking about blitzscaling hypergrowth, it takes everything. It's extraordinarily demanding. And so if you're going into something, wanting to build something from nothing and wanting to build massive success, just be prepared. Just be prepared for what it's going to take from you. And I come from a family, my parents are very humble, kind of anti-capitalist, and I live in a community that's pretty anti-capitalist as well, and lots of talk about universal basic income and things like that. And I don't want to get too political on this conversation, but seeing, the founders of that business have been extraordinarily successful financially. And by the way, they deserve to be, because most people are not prepared to work that hard. Most people are not prepared to risk that much. Most people are not prepared to sacrifice that much. And I think it's very easy to sit on the sidelines. And I'm not saying, we shouldn't be taxing billionaires or whatever. There's massive wealth inequality that I think needs to be addressed. And as I said, I don't want to get overly political here, but I think this experience changed my views on capitalism to an extent, because, and I still feel a bit conflicted in my views, to be honest, because I'm very concerned about the state of the world, and I can see that greed and inequality are causing a lot of the problems that we have with the climate and with social issues and pretty much everything. I can see that the 1%ers who are talking about colonizing outer space are massively disconnected from the rest of the population, and it's not fair, and that there's imbalances that need to be redressed. And I've also been up close and personal to really bold, smart entrepreneurs who have done big things that most people wouldn't be prepared to do, or don't have the smarts to do, or just don't have the courage actually and the resilience to do. And I think that the rewards are deserved to an extent with that. It takes a huge amount to build a business like that. And yeah, it's outside the comfort levels of most people. So it's high risk, high reward. And I think for people to sit on the sidelines and say capitalism is disgusting and that everyone should just get paid the same, but not everyone puts in the same. And I have great respect for the entrepreneurs of this world who are out there risking it all and putting themselves on the line and working themselves as hard as we all worked ourselves during those growth years at TripADeal. The rewards are deserved, I think. So as I said, I don't want to get into a big political discussion about letting billionaires be billionaires. That's not what this is about. I just wanted to make a general point about entrepreneurship and financial rewards, because anyway, I'm starting to repeat myself now, so I might leave it there. I hope this has been informative, and maybe you've gained a couple of insights here that you didn't have before. And as I said, I've gone from this experience into successive kind of partnership relationships with different founders and CEOs, always in this operational executive role as a chief operating officer or general manager. And towards the end of 2024, it's January 2025 as I record this episode. But in the last few months, I've put a package together where I am offering my skills as a consultant doing this type of work, but on a consultant basis. So my new business is called Bhakti Lab, and it is an incubator for soul-led entrepreneurs. I really love working with people who are committed to being in their truth and bringing forth their deepest soul gifts into this world, because as I said, I can see our planet's in big trouble, and I think that we need people operating at that soul level from a space of devotion. That's what Bhakti means, devotion. Devotion to self, devotion to God or source or whatever you want to call it, devotion to creating a better world. I'm interested in working with entrepreneurs who are doing that. And the work that I do is really as an accelerator and an incubator for your big ideas, whether you're running a small business client-based at the moment, like doing client-based service work, or whether you've got an idea for a startup. I've worked in travel, tech, e-commerce, and online education. And I've worked broadly across all facets of business leadership, from product and marketing and sales to customer support, logistics, fulfillment, tech, finance, HR. Like I've kind of gone across the gamut and had a lot of strategic input with every business that I've worked with as well. So if you would like support and you can leverage all of these things that I've learned through my journey of Blitzscaling at TripADeal, running the operations there, and all of the other incredible businesses and founders that I've worked with since, I'd love to connect with you. You can book a free 20-minute strategy call and we can talk about how I might be able to help you. So I offer an intensive package where we do a deep dive into the aspects of your business that you most need support with. And again, because I've worked so broadly as a generalist and often doing a lot of problem solving, I'm really agile and skillful at hotspotting in and out of different areas of the business, depending on what you need. So this is not a cookie cutter package. It's very bespoke and customized as to your business needs. Off the back of that, I'll produce a roadmap for you, like a plan for scaling your business over the next 12 months that we then talk through together. And if you'd like ongoing support, of course, I can help you with that as well. I'm now taking clients for 2025. As I said, I'm recording this in January. So I'm going to pop the link to book a free strategy call in the show notes here. I'd love to just connect with you anyway if you want to learn more about what I do. And there's a few different areas that I can help with in terms of bringing out your full potential as a founder and CEO. So I'll pop the links into the show notes, and if you have any questions, please reach out. The business is called Bhakti Lab, as I mentioned, and I'm really excited to hopefully continue the journey with you. And if not, I will see you here again next time, and thank you so much for listening.